Awesome.
All right, loving your outfits. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is very exciting, actually. And then I'll let you just let me know when to get started.
Yeah, for sure. Just waiting one more minute. I guess while we're waiting for more people to join, I do have a little poll that we've prepared, but just to give a little bit of a background on the workshops that we're going to start doing. So we're actually doing these workshops through the Alchemist Program 3.0 beta session right now. And we've been conducting quite a few of these with our regional leaders just to pass on any of the knowledge and skill sets that our team has at Covalent onto our regional leaders just to help them with their marketing or any topics that they've been interested in, which has been great. And Meltem has been kind enough to give us her guru expertise on events as she is our events manager. So she runs them flawlessly. It's actually a topic that a lot of our regional leaders have been requesting because they're looking to run more meetups. Some are looking to do hackathons and just meetups in general in their regions. So looking forward to this. But yeah, let's see. So I'll just start launching a poll just to kind of get where people's experience is in running events. Let's see. So you should be able to see it come up. There's 3 different questions. This is also anonymous, so you guys don't have to worry about anybody seeing your answers. But the first question will ask, have you ever ran an event? The second question will ask, what type of events have you ran? And then the third question will ask, what type of events do you want to learn to run? And this is just going to give us a lot better feedback in terms of what future workshops we can run or that Melton would be able to run in the future. Yeah, so we'll give you guys another, just another minute and we'll be able to end the poll and we can actually share the results live with you guys, which is pretty exciting. So we're starting to use this function a little bit more. But yeah, so there's been 5 of you who have answered so far, which isn't bad. And it
I
looks
want to
like
answer so badly.
oh yeah, it isn't allowing you to answer, right? So it looks like the majority have ran workshops. And then 2 people are actually new to running events, which is great. There's another person who's ran other ones. Okay, so there's looks like there's a lot of interest in running AMAs, Twitter Spaces, hackathons, and workshops. So that's great to see that. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, just a few more seconds, and then I can pass it off to Melton for her to get started. Just wait a little bit more. Okay, all right, so we'll just end the poll there. We'll share the results with you guys, so you'll be able to kind of see what people have answered. So 4 people answered that they have ran events before, 3 people answered no. And what type of events have people ran? It looks like it's been a little bit of everything, but most people have ran workshops and webinars, which is great, and Twitter Spaces. Not too many people have ran conferences. Then what type of events would you want to learn how to run? It's mostly AMAs, Twitter Spaces, hackathons, and workshops, which is great. All right, so I'll stop sharing and Meltem, you can take it away. I'll just turn my camera off, but yeah, feel free to introduce yourself and then go straight into the workshop.
Awesome. I'm going to see if I can share my screen because I am a bit tech challenged sometimes. Let me know if you can all see that.
Yes.
Good to go. Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm not sure where everyone is located at the moment, but welcome to this 1-hour workshop. This is from Zero to Hero in Events. I'm Meltem Algan. I'm a CMP. And I am also the event manager at Covalent. So being a CMP is just a fancy way of saying I love events. And so much so that I've dedicated my profession to this. I have over 7 years of experience in international events experience. And I've worked in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia, in Dubai, and now I'm more in North America. I'm based in Vancouver, Canada, and I host a lot of events in the US and Canada now. And I really just specialize in corporate meetings and conferences, but I've done everything from, professional golf tournaments to weddings, to large scale conferences and trade shows. All right, so this is kind of the place where no one really wants to start. It sounds boring, but it is actually very important. So we're going to start with the basics. This is the goals and objectives of an event, and this is really your foundation. Ooh. Sorry, there we go. So how do we get started with goals and objectives? Honestly, just start asking simple questions, and you can kind of think of it as a toddler that's always saying why. Right? Why are we doing this? Why should I do that? I don't want to do this. Why should we do this? Just always ask why. So some questions. Why are you planning the event? Why are you inviting attendees? What type of event or what type of attendees are we inviting to this event? And how will we measure success? So these are just kind of brainstorm questions that you and key stakeholders, both internal and external, can kind of start bouncing off each other. And with that, we can dive into specific goals and objectives. So goals are really broad in general. It's the long term. It's kind of like when you're talking to someone and you can kind of sense that they're BSing you because they say like, oh, I really want to increase brand awareness. And you're like, okay, but how? Your objectives are answering the how. It's specific and narrow, so it's used to achieve a goal. If I want to increase Covalent's brand awareness, one objective could be to get 10,000 hashtag shares of this very cool event that you are a part of right now. And then once we tailor those objectives, we can say, hey, how can we meet those? Oh, we might need to have some marketing campaigns. We might need to do X, Y, Z. And so if we look at something basic like increasing brand awareness, we can say, oh, what are some ways that we can do this? Well, in a virtual world, it's quite simple. We want to maybe do some shares or mentions of our event. Oops, sorry. When I say I'm a bit tech challenged, I mean it. There we go. Okay, so when we're saying we're increasing awareness, we can actually have a specific event hashtag to use. That event hashtag will essentially tell us whether or not people are talking about this event. The number of attendees that post during the event, I think I actually skipped a slide. No, I didn't. The number of attendees that post during the event. So if you're at this webinar right now and you're like, wow, this slide is really cool, I'm going to screenshot it and share it using the hashtag. This is a way that we're increasing brand awareness. Other ways that you can do this to kind of create some marketing activities around this would be social media contests. You've probably seen this or you've actually been a part of this. This is the share, click, follow, tag kind of contests or enter to win. You can create engaging content, which this is actually a little bit difficult to do in today's climate because I like to think of the public as just ADD toddlers, right? It is so hard to capture attention and you have seconds to do this. So if you really have an engaging story or narrative that you can either tell in a blog or tell in some sort of video or post, power to you. If you can get people to pay attention, then you are doing something right. And then another way to do this, if you're really just feeling that you're failing, is co-marketing. Partner up with someone who has a bigger following than you or who already has the audience that you're after. Ask them to be a sponsor, a speaker, whatever it is, or just out of the kindness of their heart to share what you're trying to promote. You've probably heard of KPIs, and those are key performance indicators. A little bit boring, but what are some ways that we can actually tailor these towards events? Number of registrations. So how many people signed up to this webinar? This was something that I asked Jackie. Say she says 100 people signed up, which 100 people did not, but let's say that they did. And then we would look at how many people actually attended. Another good one to look at is how many people stayed in your webinar, because if you look at a drop-off rate or if people are walking out of the room, you might want to explore why that's happening. So it's not just about how many people sign up, because if you're a lot like me, I tend to sign up for every virtual event. I maybe attend 10% of them. right? And if I do attend, am I actually staying and retaining the information? Or am I just kind of zoning out and wishing that I didn't attend? And then if I did attend, am I willing to go back to this event? Other ways are just social media follows, number of qualified leads that are acquired through this event. If someone comes up to me and says, hey, Meltem, you seem like a good event planner. Will you co-host an event with me? That is a great KPI that I would like to track. This slide, I'm not going to dive too much into SMART goals. Just keep in mind that like everything in life and business, you want to have a SMART goal. You want it to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And basically what that means is take your goal and pick it apart. How can I make this more detailed, more specific, more achievable? And that's kind of the way that you can kind of reiterate your goals to make them something that's actually worthwhile. All right, so let's go into more of my favorite area of event planning, the planning phase. What this means is you want to know your event inside out to the point where you have memorized really boring details, like the time of an event. I know that our Avalanche team, who's in Barcelona right now, or our Covalent team in Avalanche, I know that their workshops are at specific times like 4:15 p.m. to 4:45 p.m. I know which workshop, which day, what that room looks like, and where it's held. I know that because I know that event inside out. If you've seen any event planning memes, there's a lot of ways that people perceive events. They think that you are hosting happy hours or kids' birthday parties, or generally speaking, they think you're a wedding planner. What I really do is put out fires left and right. And what that means is that event planners are always putting out fires because problems constantly arise. The week before an event is this weird kind of moment where you almost hit a psychosis because it's like everything is falling apart, but you find it funny. That's just the nature of events. And this is more geared towards live events, but virtual events can also have it because let's face it, tech fails us more times than not. So it's really about how prepared can you be to make sure that you are aware of what some of these fires could be and how you're going to deal with them. So one way to combat this is the event specifications guide. This sounds super boring. This is what CMPs call it. It's the ESG. I call it my Bible. You can call it your Torah, your Quran, whatever you want to call it. It is a holy document, even if you're not religious. So this is your final working document, and it's shared with key event stakeholders. So for me, my Bible has been shared with everyone on the team that really needs to see it. The idea behind this is, knock on wood, if something happens to me and I get hit by a bus tomorrow, can my team take what I've created and planned and roll with it? Do they know who to reach out to? All of this stuff. It contains every micro detail. So this is just a list of what it could include. This is your goals and objectives. This is your event profile. The event profile is essentially just everything about the event. So it's, date, location, all of that information. The budget, super important. Attendee profile, who are our guests? And then sponsorship overview, food and beverage. This is if it's applicable. So the event specification guide, mine has been 2 pages, mine has been 20 pages. It just depends on the nature of the event. So what does it look like? This is what mine looks like. Our team is currently in Avalanche. I don't know if anyone's there right now. If you are, that's weird because there seems to be a lot to do in Barcelona. So the Avalanche Summit, on the left side here, where I've kind of created a little circle, you can see an outline. If you click any one of these areas, you can go directly to that part of the event Bible. And this includes everything, and I hyperlink everything. The idea here is that you want one document that just takes you everywhere. But this is what the Bible looks like, at least mine. It is just bare bones, and I fill it in as I need to. So for an example, for Avalanche, we actually don't have a side event. So I would remove this section, but I would maybe add a little bit more to media and PR. I might want to add some sections on who we could possibly reach out to. etc. So it's just really tailoring a template that you already have to fit the nature of your event and just as much detail as possible. What this does is identify gaps. It makes you really think about some of the things you forgot because the scope of an event is so huge. And for anyone that wants this, I can send you my template afterwards. It's really just about how you want to use it. The budget. I'm not going to dive into this part too much, but here's an overview of what a basic budget can look like. You have your estimated cost, you have your actual cost. What I like to do, because I'm a bit of a nerd, is I gamify this. I like to get my estimated cost as close to my actual cost as possible. And that is just because I hate numbers and I think this is really boring otherwise. And so your budget can look like anything. The best thing to do is to really put it into buckets where you have like kind of your event logistics, and then you trickle into more of the nitty gritty of swag, advertising, marketing, etc. One way that we all know if you don't have the budget to create the event you want is to dive into sponsorships. So you've definitely seen your title, main event sponsors. These guys are like, the big, heavy MetaMask or whatever it is, Covalent, of course. We can be main sponsors. We have some money, or we just have influence. Or the more traditional tiered gold, silver, bronze, whatever it is. And then there's another interesting one, which a lot of people overlook, which is in-kind sponsorship. So maybe you want to create a really visually stunning event, but you don't have an in-house design team, or you don't have a marketing team to do this, and you know that external marketing costs are high. Well, why don't we just maybe go into finding an in-kind sponsor? Maybe there's a marketing firm that's really looking to amp up their portfolio, and they're willing to do designs for you just to have their brand plastered all over the place and have this walking portfolio. So it's a good idea to always look at, who's looking for some sort of exposure and how can you mutually benefit one another. Okay. The events checklist. So a lot of people will ask me, well, can you just send me an events checklist and I'll just follow that and then I'll be an event planner? No, I can't do that because it doesn't exist. It's like project management. There is no cookie cutter checklist, but here is just a quick overview of some of the things you can look at to start getting your event going. And that always starts with your goals and objectives. No matter what, every list you see, it's going to start with that. And if it doesn't, it's a bad list. So just disregard it. On the right here, you'll also see my booth packing list. So I use a list for everything. I do handwritten lists. I use sticky notes. I use digital lists. It is just part of the event game. So I highly recommend this. You can take a screenshot of just the events checklist, but really all that matters is that you start with your event goals and objectives, and you know that the event checklist does not end at the event day. There's actually more to it with feedback, follow-up, and evaluation. All right, and then once you kind of start diving into all the ESG and Bible, you can develop your project plan. A really good way to do the project plan is to kind of go back and look at this checklist. What are some of the dates I can plug into my calendar? Perhaps it's the event day. Okay, if my event is, 1 month from now, maybe I need to launch tickets at least tomorrow, right? And so I can start plugging in these dates, and that will give you an idea of kind of how you want your event timeline to flow. We use ClickUp at Covalent, but you can use any kind of project management tool or just Excel and your calendar. It doesn't have to be fancy. What's really important is that you understand your deadlines. All right, so the secret sauce to events is always ask yourself, what would it take to ruin this event? And this is a really good benchmark. So if you've heard that Alanis Morissette song, which is, I think it's ironic, but technically none of the lyrics are ironic. Maybe that's the irony, but it's like rain on your wedding day. Think about that when you're planning an event, right? Because what is it that could happen that's just going to make you upset or make your attendees miserable? And then start putting together loose plan A, B, and C. So always prepare for rain, but always have a smile on your face as you do this preparation. So some of the things that we can look at with events is you're trying to basically come up with situations that can ruin your event. So when you look at things like, for an example, the weather, or with technology or accessibility, capacity, any of these things, you can start to brainstorm ways that you would be a pessimist in those scenarios. So with the weather, what are some of the things that would impact the weather? Or how could the weather impact my event? So this is one that people oftentimes miss, coat check. If you live somewhere like Canada, you typically need a coat check, but what type of coat check really depends on your attendee profile. If you live in Vancouver, it's going to be raining. It's raining right now. I'm looking outside, it's miserable. So people will probably have an umbrella if you're at an in-person event. Perhaps there'll be slippery floors. Do we have a mop nearby? Do we have an umbrella stand? All of these scenarios are now adding things to your project or your Bible or project timeline that you wouldn't have thought of if you weren't such a pessimist. And then other areas, audiovisual, people often overlook the amount of power outlets that you need in order to conduct a meeting where there's laptops for a presentation. Have you ever been to an event where you were supposed to bring your laptop or a workshop and then there weren't power outlets and you're like, well, now I can't use my laptop. So these are the kind of things you have to kind of keep in mind as you're designing your event. What would ruin your attendees' day at your event? No power outlets, their laptop dying. Okay, let me ask the event venue how many power outlets are around. And then with capacity, some things to make note of are that the capacity chart you see online is not necessarily accurate. And I know this sounds weird, but for instance, we held an event at ETH Denver. The capacity was 50 people in the room. My guest list was 50 people. Great, right? If I'm not really thinking about it, I'm saying this is sweet. 50-person room, 50-person guest list. No, I got the room that was 120-person capacity. And the reason being is because I wanted a flow in the room. It was a networking event. There was multiple activities or areas where guests could enjoy the event. So there was an interactive station, there was food, there was seating. So with a 50-person capacity, my guests actually can't move and they can't interact comfortably. So that 50-person capacity is not relevant to my event. And then when you factor in something like the pandemic, it's really not relevant because people don't want to be that close to each other. So my 120-person capacity room actually fit really well for this event type. I'm going to throw this meme at you so that you really drill it in your head as in-person events come back. Coat check is really important. It's really, really often overlooked and it's so important. So just keep that in mind. The weather impacts everything. All right. Another thing that impacts everything is your attendee profile. And this goes for virtual events and in-person events. Is your attendee group tech savvy, right? Are they younger, older? Will they need seating if they're older? You need to make sure that there is like ample place to sit if you get tired. What is their background? If I sit here and start using terms like BEO and ESG without telling you, when my attendee profile does not have an events background because they're attending a events 101 workshop, then my content is not valuable. So just remember that language is really tied to professional and educational background so that that content is digestible. Economic levels. If this is a really high-end group that I'm doing an in-person event for, and perhaps my event is a black tie gala, my coat check is going to be a bit different. I might have to pay $1,000 for coat check because I now need a coat check attendee. I need ability to tip. I need security. Versus if I do a meetup at, the university, my coat check could literally be a table where people pile their coats. And I put a sign that says, it is not my responsibility if something gets stolen. So it really just depends on who your attendees are, and just take some time to understand them and get into their head and understand their likes, dislikes, and what type of tools that they use in order to tailor an event that's really curated for them. I want to also just talk a little bit about culture. If your attendees are, if you're putting on an event in a culture that you're not familiar with, please consider onboarding a cultural liaison. So in this photo, you can't really see because it's a bit grainy and there's text over it, but I am the only woman in this room. This was an event that I was hosting in Canada for Saudi attendees. I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I know the culture very well, but the event organizers were based in Canada. So I was onboarded as the event professional as well as the cultural liaison. And one of the things that I knew that a lot of people in the Canadian group did not know was that when we were tailoring our content, we had the word guinea pig in it to use as a form of the word example. And we had to take that out because that's not actually language that you can use with a Saudi attendee profile that we had. So it's things like that that are often missed when there's a gap in culture. And so it's really important to know that you want to be putting on an event that's respectful of the culture at stake. Another example of this, to really make it obvious, is in this event that I hosted in 2016. You can see that at the time in Saudi Arabia, men and women were not actually delegates in the same space. This was the first time that this type of an event was held. So we put a divider in the middle. What it means to have a divider in the middle is that you also have to look at the two doors at which attendees enter. You have women on the right, they have a separate entrance and registration, and men on the left with a separate entrance and registration. So that means that the registration times also have to be different because you want to maintain that segregation in the hallway as well. All right, so event design. So this is the more fun area of how to create a unique, memorable experience. You really start with inspiration, dive into ideation, and then you go and implement all of these factors. So your inspiration is generally the problem you're looking to solve. The ideation is how you want to solve it, and the implementation is how you're going to actually bring that vision to life. A lot of that dials down into the event content, especially when you're looking at in-person events, but also when you're looking at virtual. You want to have a program flow that really maps out the timing of how you're going to deliver your content or how you're going to structure your event. The detailed agenda will be for organizers or key stakeholders. For instance, Jackie and I, we would have a separate detailed agenda that, well, I was a little bit late, so that detailed agenda would have had me actually come in a bit earlier to test the Zoom link, but that would not be the agenda that we share with you as the attendee. The attendee would have, here's the Zoom link, or here's the room info of how to get to the event venue, and here's what we're going to cover with a time stamp on each activity. For your speakers, so if we use this workshop as an example, Jackie approached me and she said, hey, we have interest in an events workshop. Are you able to deliver something that's engaging and relevant to this group? And I said, sure, but let's maybe dive into the goals and objectives first. And then we circled back to that. And as we're doing that, Jackie had to consider whether or not I was available and within the budget. Well, Covalent has hired me full time, so I am available and I'm within the budget. And then there's a reference check and a demo. This is really important for speakers. If you are able to get your hands on a demo video, do it, because this is actually the best way you can see whether or not your speaker fits your content. And with things being so online and accessible, this isn't hard to do, so don't skip out on it. You can have a really credible speaker and they're just so boring, right? We've all sat through that, right? This guy's a PhD, he should be he or she I shouldn't be sexist there. They should be fantastic. And I should be fascinated by this talk, but it is so dry, right? Just because you're credible, available, and relevant does not mean you are the right fit as a speaker. And the bonus is really if you're active on social media, because you want your speaker to also act as a promotional tool. Key considerations. So it's 2022. We really want to be pushing diversity and inclusion. And this is super important, especially nowadays. So we've all likely seen the organization that's saying, hey, we really value diversity and inclusion, but then their panel looks like this. Now, raise your hand to yourself if you think that this panel is an all-white male panel. Sometimes they're called manels or male and pale panels. But it also goes to say that when you're trying to be more inclusive, most people think about having female talent at the forefront. But female talent can also fit into this category of these little doggies on the screen. So what if I said that these dogs are women? They're all white women. Sure, there is a different perspective there as a woman, but you want a mix. You want a mix of different experiences. So try to get some BIPOC in there. And for those who are not familiar, BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So we're trying to bring to the forefront marginalized groups that otherwise may have not had a voice in an event or in a platform like this. And as the event organizer, you can curate that and you have full ownership of that. So just remember that diversity and inclusion should be at the forefront. Okay, so in-person experiences, the best way to try to understand if your event is going to be interesting for the people that are attending is to put yourself in place of the attendee and walk through the event. And you can do this on a virtual event as well. I'm just going to demonstrate this through the lens of an in-person event because it's easier to visualize. So in February, we hosted an event in Denver. And this is what I was handed. This was the blank canvas that I was given. And it was my job as the event organizer to tailor an event that fit our audience and that aligned with our goals and objectives. So on the left here, you'll see a blank floor plan. All I know is that I enter the venue. On the left is some seating, and on the far end is a bar. The rest is up to me to design. And one of the main goals and objectives here was to invite key partners, stakeholders, and investors and really thank them in person for being such a support at Covalent. So gratitude was a major part of what we were trying to achieve, and how we were going to achieve that was through a really enjoyable, seamless event. So what does that include? All right, so let's walk through. Always look at your attendee. Just imagine your attendee as a very socially awkward kind of loner person. And this helps you tailor an event. You don't want to tailor the event to someone who's super independent and sociable and comfortable at events. You want to always assume that your attendee is just socially awkward and doesn't want to be there. So how can we make this experience better for them? Well, when you enter, I'm going to put a swag table right at the front. This is because you don't actually need a person by your side to go look at some swag and just suss out the room. It's a good little almost icebreaker. And so in a virtual event like Jackie did today, Jackie started off with a poll. That is just something to kind of get you to suss out the room and get ready to interact. That's what this swag table was. It was a way for you to be able to interact without having to put too much thought into it. Next, I added an oxygen bar into this event. The reason for that is because it's an interactive, memorable experience. It was something that I could brand. We were in Denver, and Denver is called the Mile High City. So you're at a high altitude and oxygen levels are it's a bit harder to breathe than say here in Vancouver. And so there's something to do either by yourself or, hey, grab someone aside and have a little meeting. You are now stuck there for 10 minutes. This is a great time to have a one-on-one conversation with someone. Then as you go through the room, you have a food station to pick at. Everyone likes to eat. And then you have an open bar because most people like to drink. The reason this was an open bar is because our goal and objective was to create an enjoyable event and to showcase our gratitude. Showcasing gratitude and paying for your drinks don't exactly go hand in hand. That being said, we had the budget to be able to do this. If you don't have the budget for an open bar, do not do it. All right. But then you have to take it one step back. What do people do before they enter the room, right? And that can be in a virtual meeting too. For an example, before the virtual meeting started, you can also say that maybe Jackie's poll was the entrance into the virtual meeting before I was able to start the event. In this, we needed an entrance sign so people could find it. We needed security because this is an open bar and it's America. And the drinking age is 21. So yeah, we needed security to check. And there's me just putting on wristbands and checking in our attendees because it's a private event. So there's a lot of layers once you start acting as the event attendee and really walking through the room. You can see all the things that might have been missed otherwise. At the end of the day, the Inner Circle cocktail, which was the event we did, was a huge success. And if you're trying to look for some inspiration, just look at the name here. It's an Inner Circle cocktail in Denver. So what did I do? I found a room that had a whole bunch of circles around it, and it's in Denver. What is Denver? Mile High City. Let's get an oxygen bar because that really fits the theme. So sometimes all you have to do is kind of pick apart the name of your event and try to figure out what are some ways that you can make this event memorable in your design. And the ideal venue, using this as an example, is somewhere where if you're doing a networking event or if you're doing something where you want people to move around, have space for them to move around, have an event flow like the design of walking through the space, and then have some seating because some people need to sit or will want to sit. And it's not your job to guess. Just assume that people want to do everything and try to tailor your event to all those different areas when possible. All right, so for virtual events, the visualization also works for virtual events. And so some of the things you want to think about, well, if I'm doing a virtual event, what does my Zoom background look like? Or am I just blurring the background? These are things you should ask. If we have a unified Zoom background, then ask the event organizer as a speaker, is there one? Or as an event organizer, let the speaker know that there is one, and always test this out ahead of time. The agenda and the structure of the event. Will you have a poll? Will you have Q&A? Will you have breakout rooms in the virtual event? Or is it just going to be one speaker the entire time? Is it recorded? If it's recorded, are you asking your speaker, is that okay? Because you really have to ask them if it's okay for you to record their content and share their content. AV and Tech Dry Run. We like to sometimes assume that everyone knows how to do the things that we know how to do, but not everyone does. Prior to joining Covalent, I was running a speaker series, and the demographic and audience, including speakers, was older. So knowing how to put in a Zoom background was not just common sense, as we may assume in the blockchain industry. So just do an AV and tech run when applicable. See if your speaker or attendee internet is stable enough to actually run through this event. And then, like most events in this industry, there's some sort of POAP, right? So you want to make sure that you have time to design it, mint it, and then distribute it accordingly. Are you doing a POAP dispenser, or are you just emailing a link? And then the other thing about virtual events to keep in mind is that you have an event or a database that you're downloading. You have email addresses. Is there a call to action that you really want your attendees to take note of? For an example, at the end of this event, if I had a follow-up event, let's just say this was a free webinar, but I'm actually hosting paid webinars after this. And this is my way to introduce to you what type of speaker I am. My call to action at the end of this webinar would be to send you a thank you email. Email your POAP so I know you're going to check it because that's something you want. And then add my call to action. Hey, did you like this webinar? Give me some feedback. Also, I'm actually hosting these paid webinars. Here is what I'm looking to host. If there's something that's not on the list that you'd like to see, please email me. And now we've created a dialogue, and I'm asking what I would actually like in return and hoping that you do it. And then event registration emails. So there's so many different platforms you can use, but I really like Eventbrite. It's so easy. People are familiar with it, and then it plugs directly into your calendar. So your confirmation email, this is really the event details. If you have an event hashtag, feel free to add it there. If you want to collect attendee information, for instance, you're doing an in-person event or you're doing a virtual event. For in-person, if I want to know if there's dietary restrictions, this is the confirmation email where I really want to drill that in. Hey, thanks for confirming. P.S. We have an open buffet. Please let us know if you have any allergies or sensitivities. If it's for a virtual event, hey, we'd really like to know if you are a developer, an event organizer, whatever it is, just to collect some information that's really going to help us tailor our event. And then for the reminder, this is where you want to add the Zoom link, where you want to add the entrance information. If it's a complicated way to actually get to the entrance, it's like, oh, go to the second floor, take these elevators, and you'll see room 203. And then any kind of sponsor, speaker info, event hashtag. And then your thank you, like I said, is kind of the call to action and what you're hoping to get out of the follow-up. Your upcoming events, sign up for our mailing list, whatever it is. Other ways that you can personalize your virtual event is a hashtag, of course, a contest giveaway that's specific to attendees where the winner will be announced at the end of the event. So that's really pushing people to actually go. And then a photo. We all love a group photo, but sometimes with a virtual event, you just don't have photo opportunities. So you've probably seen this type of photo where people want to feel included in what you've provided, and then you can share that. And it feels nice to feel like you've attended something with other people. All right, so more marketing. So when you think of events, you want to be memorable, and a lot of people think about swag. This was just some of the swag that we had recently in Denver. Keep in mind that there are some key considerations here. Swag is expensive. It's not cheap. Even cheap swag is expensive. There's a minimum order. So if I said, hey, Jackie, are there 5 people attending this webinar? I'd love to give everyone a t-shirt. Generally, there's a minimum order of, say, 12 or 50, sometimes 200, depending on the item. So keep that in mind, that it's not only expensive, but it might not be feasible for a small group. And then there are sometimes additional design fees, particularly if you don't have an in-house designer. You can get charged $70 to basically upload your logo on a shirt and have the design team from that organization send you the placement. Right? So it's not cheap. Sizing is always weird. When you're going into t-shirts, you need to consider unisex sizing versus men and women's. And then how are you going to really distribute those sizes? If it's mostly male group, you want more medium, large. You do want extra large and some 2XL, not too many XS if it's mostly male. And then you want to also look at material and fit. If the shirt doesn't fit your attendees or your audience, they're not going to wear it. And if it's really cheap material, they're also not going to wear it. Therefore, it's wasted money. You might as well just light your money on fire. And then the worst part of all of this is the shipping, the expensive shipping costs, the delays, the customs issues. So there's a lot to really factor in. If you're going to look at physical swag, do all of your research to make sure that you don't run into some of these hurdles. So what are some less expensive alternatives? This can be enter to win, scan a QR code, Uber Eats or e-gift vouchers, or some sort of stickers and candy. Sticker Mule is a really great place to kind of get your stickers if you're in North America. It's Sticker Mule, M-U-L-E. But another one here is handwritten notes. And this is my favorite. It costs almost nothing. At ETH Denver, I had our entire team. I printed out little cards, and then on the back, I wrote a note. This on the right here, if you're Turkish, you'll know that it's Turkish, as am I. But this is actually my father's handwriting. So I grew up with really nice handwriting in the home. And so I've always treasured handwritten notes and cards, and which is why I've kind of kept up this even in my professional career. Evaluation. So I'll just skip over this pretty quickly, but at the end of an event, you always want to evaluate. What did you do well and what could be improved? You want internal feedback and you want external feedback. The internal is within your team. Let's do an event debrief. Meet with your team in person and actually talk about this, or virtually. And then externally is a feedback form, which can be in your call to action or in a focus group. And some of the questions are just, did we meet our goals? What went well, etc. And then the same for external, which is really like, what was the highlight of the event? Would you recommend this event to a friend? And what was your biggest takeaway? And then, of course, ask for constructive feedback because you want to know how you can improve. All right, there we go. That concludes our 1 hour workshop. I'm sorry that I didn't really dive into the specifics. I wasn't really sure what the audience would have wanted in terms of what type of events. So that's really just an overview of events in general and what to kind of keep in mind. So.
No, that was great. Thank you so much, Malcolm. I never even thought about like the cultural aspect of things too. So it was a great example that you gave. For those of you who have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom. Or you can just type it into the chat and then we can get Melton answering them. But yeah, we can just give you guys a few minutes to see if any of you want to ask anything. Feel free to. And if there's not any questions, then I guess we can close it off. I'm assuming everybody's an expert after this.
Well, I would hope that there were some good nuggets in there.
It's a lot. I learned a lot of new things too. I mean, I used to run events, but there's like even small details or things that I never had considered based on your presentation. So thank you.
You are welcome. Yeah, and thanks everyone for attending. It's always good to just kind of dive into events. I love talking about events. So anytime you have questions, find me on, LinkedIn or Telegram or whatever it is, and let's chat about events.
We have one question that comes in from Max saying, do you have any experience hosting a Kahoot session on a webinar?
Ooh, I've never even heard that, to be honest. What is that?
Yeah, what is that, Max? I guess we'll wait to see if we can provide some details there. Oh, it's like a Q&A.
Oh, okay, interesting. So it depends. I guess if it's audience Q&A or like speaker Q&A. Kahoot. Oh, well, the answer to that is clearly no, but I will look into that.
Oh, interesting. It might be fun to try if it has like quizzes and games and stuff for a different way to engage people. Yeah, we'll look at that, Max. Feel free to shoot us that link. That might be something cool to do. We have Daniel who asked, how can they get you on Telegram?
I'll add that there. Pretty sure that's it. I'm so new to all this stuff still.
Daniel, if you look at the chat, oh, let's see.
Oh, I think that's just to panelists, everyone.
Yeah, you'll see Meltem's typed in her Telegram down there.
There.
All right. Okay, got those ones. Ooh, looks like you might get some questions coming in. All right. Well, if there's not any other questions, we can close it off. But we will be looking forward to doing our next workshop that will be done by our chief of staff named Terry. He did a workshop before that had to do with leadership and entrepreneurship that did very well. And the upcoming one will have to do with conflict resolution, how to handle that with your team, how to really set expectations for those of you who aren't really good with the kind of like conflict or raising issues, which it's good to have those conversations. Yeah, that's going to be the next one that'll happen in April. So we'll post more information on that. But thank you so much, Meltem. This was super helpful. For those of you who weren't able to attend, or if you have friends or family or colleagues that are interested in this will be available on our YouTube. It has been streamed live and the recording will be provided. So feel free to shoot them the link, and looking forward to seeing Meltem on future workshops here.
For sure. Yeah. If there's any specific ones, I can definitely tailor them for what people are interested in.
All right. Awesome. We'll go based off of the poll that we had. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks so much again